So now we're moving into section 3, which is invest the difference wisely. And we've been banging on about investing a lot on the podcast. It's a big, big movement within the FIRE community. You need to become a grown-up around your investing. You need to understand where your returns come from. It's a little bit like asset allocation, the 4% rule, times 25, times 300, real asset classes. There's a lot going on here. This is probably where your brain needs to be rewired the most from your sort of previous non-FIRE thinking. So yeah, investing and how important is this? And the interesting thing here is we've had a 10-year bull market, and during that time, the FIRE movement has, gained a lot of popularity, a lot of followers. So as we always say as professional financial advisors, we like bear markets. That's where we earn our crust. That's where we earn our golden coins. So it's going to be interesting to see how well behaved a lot of the people in the FIRE community are. I know a lot of them will, act with equanimity during temporary declines, actually enjoy it and realize it's a benefit because they're still contributing, so they're getting more bang for their buck, et cetera, et cetera. I often think there should be like a dashboard when you log into, let's say, your online account, and when the markets are down and they know that you're investing every month, there should just be a bright green smiley face that says you should be feeling bright green smiley face. And they go, I'm not feeling bright green smiley face. It's like, well, you should be. Just like a quick visual cue. Again, that's a great suggestion from a behavioural point of view that no investment platforms will ever do. Do you know what they also don't do, investment platforms, while I'm on it? They don't allow you to automatically increase your savings. You should say, I'm paying £100 a month. I want this to automatically increase by 1% a month. They don't allow it. Okay. Why would they not allow this? It's 2019. We're putting someone on Mars. We're flying to space. We've got about 8 companies doing it, and we can't increase our investment contributions by 1% a month. What a great plug and play forget. And before you know it, 8 years later, you'll be doing £900 a month or whatever it works out to be. Over to you, mate, on the investment side. Sorry.
All I would say is that the smiley face should be yellow and not green, because green conjures up like sickness. And
Let's just get the bloody smiley face on there. We'll worry about the colour and the font. But, just a quick dashboard. When I'm seeing red in the investment markets, I'm pleased for all of my saving clients that are still in the saving stage of their life.
Yes.
Me as well. But the minute 99.999% of investors see red, they think it's a bad thing. This is mind-blowing. But anyway, let's nudge on from that. So investing, what have you seen with people that are new to FIRE, sort of doing FIRE for a while? How do they think about investing?
The classic kind of new to FIRE person would be in a reasonable job, kind of middle-class person who is sensible and conservative with a small c and prudent, which is fine. But those people are often just terrified by the stock market, just absolutely terrified by the roller coaster or by what they see in their mind's eye as a casino.
So there is a huge amount of unlearning here, and unlearning is one of the hardest things you can do as a human. As Charlie Munger said, he said the human brain is like the human egg. Once the one sperm goes in, it locks off. That's like our brain. An idea goes in, it locks off. It's very hard to then unravel that. So unlearning is something I'm really passionate about. Yeah. So
there's a classic line delivered by Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back when he's teaching Skywalker to harness the Force, and he says, "You must unlearn what you have learned. Like you have to clear your mind of all that outdated, inaccurate information and belief system, the limiting beliefs that are holding you back."
The mainstream media have been pumping into your brain ever since you've been able to look at anything connected to the stock market, and they'll continue to do that forever. They're not here to peddle wisdom. They're here to throw news at you, and they do not have your family's financial future in mind. So this is a big unlearning journey. So what have you found working with people in the FIRE?
What you have to, so the way I encourage people to visualize the unlearning. So I say, look, I know what you're thinking when you're thinking about the stock market. You're thinking about like a film like Trading Places or Wall Street, and you're thinking obnoxious young blokes in pinstripe suits shouting down phones, buy, sell, etc. And I tell those people, expunge that from your mind. I now want you to think about a factory.
But in some ways, you've reinforced it.
I'm replacing it.
Don't think of a pink elephant. All right, mate. I won't think of pinstripe. I didn't think of a guy in a pinstripe suit. But
they have to. You have to make them aware of this contrast. Okay, so if all of this stuff is just running in the background and they're not aware of it, and they're not going to start the process of rewiring their brain. But you're right. I start with like making them think about the thing that they shouldn't be thinking about. And then you move on to, now I want you to think about a factory production line, you know, like with robots building a car, with forklift trucks buzzing around, with actual real
businesses
stuff being made, that real people want to buy with real money and use in their everyday lives. And,
businesses, collection of the greatest businesses.
And so once you visualize that and you realize that what you're doing when you're saving into the stock market is you're just buying a slice of the economy. You're just buying a slice of those, as you put it, those great businesses of the world. And then the system is working for you. And because if you go to a factory production line at Nissan or Toyota or Ford, the line does not stop. I mean, the line does not stop in the,
it's not going up and down as the stock market moves from point to point.
And also, there's a night shift. I mean, the robots are working 24/7, and so if ever I'm kind of struggling to get to sleep at night, I just visualize the fact that all my factories are working the night shift right now, and that is putting money in my bank account.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It's a very calming, reassuring prospect that just kind of settles me down at night.
Well, again, it's, the financial illiterate. I don't want to invest in the stock market, but I'm happy to pay the bulk of my monthly expenses to support it for the rest of my life. So the bulk of what people are buying are connected to stock market companies, or are connected to the stock market, connected to the great companies and businesses of the world. So I don't want to invest in those businesses, but I'm happy to be a customer of all of them for the rest of my life. It's like you are going to buy all of the services and products that the stock market, the great businesses produce for the rest of your life. But you won't benefit from the growth, which is what's been happening for multi-decades. I don't want to invest in it, but I'm happy to support it. You can make it up. It's just so counterintuitive.
So the way people say, oh, isn't the stock market risky? Is it dangerous? And isn't, et cetera. And I'm like, why don't you
stupidity is risky and dangerous. Sorry. Stupidity is risky and dangerous.
But what I say is, don't you think that actually the safe position to be in is on the same side of the table as Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and the people that own the wealth, the people that own the system? It's much safer to be on the same side of the table as those guys, right? Because that's where the power lies.
Or just get your monthly budget out. Sorry, I'm ramming on the same point. Get your monthly budget out, right? I'm paying HSBC, tick, stock market. I'm paying gas, stock market. Going to that gym, stock market. 90% of what you're spending is going to be stock market related. Yeah. That tells you that you should be involved in it.
But people, people have kind of political and philosophical views that are unhelpful. My view of this is that ultimately, the economy is producing real wealth and it's lifting living standards generally. Yes, there is inequality, but it sure as hell beats feudalism and ploughing the field for the lord of the manor, right? So modern capitalism is a hell of a step up from how we've spent the last 100,000 years. And so once you kind of accept that and you realize it's this phenomenally productive system for creating and spreading abundance, then why would you feel, that's a pretty robust system that has survived booms, busts, inflations, depressions, crashes, banking crises, wars, all the rest of it. So it's a pretty safe and robust system.
Terrorism, everything also, so far has been thrown at it.
It's also a productive and I would say an ethical system as well. So like, to me, all of those things point in the same direction. You need to own a slice of the stock market.
Yeah. The great businesses that sell real things to real people. Yeah. Okay. So let's drill down some of the rules, the famous rules in the fire space. So you need to work out what your number is. What capital amount, what stash you're trying to accumulate. So very simplistically, you can take your monthly amount and times it by 300. So let's keep it simple. If you wanted to live on £1,000 a month with no mortgage, no kids, no other sort of expenses, just your living costs, £1,000 a month, then you need to accumulate a stash, a pile of money. The word stash comes from, I think, Mr. Money Mustache. So I'm going to give him credit there. Great blog.
Yeah.
It's times 300. So if you wanted £1,000 a month, you times it by 300. That's 300,000. You wanted £2,000 a month, you times it by 300. That's 600,000. Or you can work out the annual amount and times it by 25. You get to the same number. So if I wanted £24,000 a year, I times it by 25 and I get to 600. If you wanted to be a bit more cautious on that, let's say I wanted £24,000 a year, times it by 25 is 600. To be really sure, I'd maybe accumulate 700 or 750, but we're not going to get too granular on this sort of stuff at the moment. And this is the famous 4% rule by Mr. Bill Begum. Over to you, mate.
So there's a very important implication so I think of it as the 25 times rule of thumb. So I think
rule of thumb, great.
I think
starting
annual
point.
I think annual rather than monthly.
That's fine.
And it's a rule of thumb. But the important implication of that rule of thumb is that every pound that you can strip out of your cost base brings the finishing line closer, not by £1, but by £25. It's a very powerful multiplier effect.
Wow, that's a great way of looking at it, mate. Yeah, just hammer that point on a bit more.
So getting to financial independence is like running a marathon. It's a long process, but it's a marathon where you can bring the finishing line closer to you. So imagine if you could make the marathon only 20 miles, not 26 miles. Well, that's making it a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
Similarly with frugality, if you can take £1 off your cost base, you're taking 25 off the amount that you need for enough.
Yeah.
And so you're just making your life a whole bunch easier.
Yeah. I talk about it a lot, financial levers. What levers can you pull, to achieve financial independence sooner and to get over the financial finish line? What ones are you in control of? What ones should you be aware of? What ones don't have much control over?
That's the beauty of spending, right? So we were talking earlier about income. That's not 100% within your immediate control. So that takes some time. It takes some negotiation. It takes cooperation with other people. It takes some self-development.
Studying, a lot of stuff.
Learning.
Yes.
So the beauty of cutting your spending is it's within your immediate and direct personal control. And so, obviously there are people that live in poverty. There are people in destitution in this world. I know that. But I'm talking now about most people in the UK or other developed countries. And let's be honest, most of us are wasting money.
Yeah.
If anyone, says that they're not, I'm quite happy to come and follow that person around for a week and we'll see, right? Because let's be honest, we're all wasting money. We live in an environment of abundance.
Sure.
And so everyone has the ability to kind of attack their cost base, and that's the most immediate lever to pull.
It is so impactful. And again, working with real clients, I create their sort of financial master plan, and then I do a what if and say, what happens if you spend 10% less, 20% less. And it's scary or not once you understand compounding, how impactful this is. So the most important lever you can pull is spending less. I believe the second most impactful contributing factor is the amount that you save and invest. And then the third on the list is the investment return that you get. Whereas a lot of people are focused on the investment return. I want my money to work the hardest. No, you need to work the hardest by controlling your expenses. You need to work the second most hardest by investing more. The market will do what it's going to do in terms of the investment return, but that's outside of our control to some degree. But that will happen. That will just be. You need to be more, proactive in terms of spending less and investing more. So now back to investing. So what do we do with this money? So what does the FIRE community say about investing the difference, and how do you invest that wisely?
So the first thing you need to do is, or a lot of people need to do when they discover the movement, or where they're kind of getting their act together, is get out of this kind of paradigm where they're frozen, they're stuck, they're just huddled in with cash in a bank account, and they're kind of terrified to kind of put any of that at risk as they see it.
Well, it's already at risk, so let's not miss that point yet. Cash is very risk. Cash is not king. Cash is pauper for the real investor. But yeah, in their financially illiterate mind, yeah, definitely.
So the analogy that I use for those people is, I say, your cash, that cash that you think is safe in that bank account, that is like an ice sculpture at a party. It is melting away before your very eyes thanks to inflation. And you can't see it disappearing, but it is disappearing. It is absolutely disappearing.
That is the best thing I've ever heard you say, my friend. That is absolutely brilliant. I've never heard cash as being described as an ice sculpture.
I wrote a blog post called "The Ice Sculpture and the Turkey," and I put a picture of, because visualization is important.
Sure.
A swan ice sculpture, this beautiful thing, and there's a kind of a drip tray underneath.
That is your cash. That is your cash.
That is your cash. And so people say that cash is safe. You're guaranteed to lose half of its real value over like 20, 30 years.
Over a multi-decade.
Guaranteed that you will lose on that deal.
Yeah, via inflation, and it will lose its purchasing power. Which inflation is the slow, silent, deadly tax applied to the financially illiterate. It is so pervasive.
Yes. And so it's funny. The people that often the people that are kind of most scared of the stock market, I sometimes say to them, look, if fear is your driver, you need to get scared of cash, right? Because you should be terrified at the prospect of. So back in the 70s, when I was alive, I have to confess, inflation hit like 26% in the 70s in the UK. How safe is your cash looking when interest rates are 2% and inflation is 26%, right? You're getting murdered in that scenario. You're getting absolutely murdered, like hyperinflation in Zimbabwe or Weimar Republic Germany.
Yeah.
It's just a version of that, and you're being wiped out.
Venezuela, yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, obviously we hoped in the more developed nations this won't strike upon us, but nothing is impossible. Okay, so back to drilling down on the investing. So you need to invest in the great businesses of the world, which most people call equities. You can do multi-asset investing, where you sprinkle in fixed income, which is corporate bonds, government bonds. Again, I'm not going to explain all those terms, but they're just various different assets that you can invest in. You've got alternatives, you've got commodities. Generally, I think you should strip it out, which is what I think most of the people in the FIRE community do. And they split it between equities, the great businesses of the world, and then fixed income. Really, they're using fixed income as an emotional asset class. They know that equities will provide the real returns long term, but their temperament might not be able to deal with 100% equity portfolio. That's why they sprinkle in some fixed income, which is an emotional asset class, not a financial or intellectual asset class. At least you need to know that. But I'm going to pass over to you in a minute about that sort of split. But the most important thing is when it comes to your investing is you don't get involved in things which blow up. You avoid things which are working now. So you need to become wise enough to know, I'm going to invest in things which have always worked, which to strip down when it comes to investing capital and not looking at property is basically splitting your money between equities and fixed income. The rest, I think, is a bit of a distraction. But again, that's why I like the FIRE community. because they've demystified finance. They've done what financial advisors should have done the minute we came into this business. We should have said, right, the most important financial lever is spend less. You need to invest more. And here's how you invest your money correctly. But we've sort of muddied the water and just sort of done it, but not done it, but sort of knew we were doing it, not doing it. Some of us have become a bit more wiser over time. And then the FIRE community have come and said, this is financial success demystified. And then the professionals have gone, actually, they've nailed this pretty much. There's a few holes in it, but wow, that's why I'm so into the FIRE movement for demystifying financial success, which is a hard thing to do. So hats off for that. They stripped it down to its bare essence. Over to you, mate.
So remember I said I wrote a blog post called The Eye Sculpture and the Turkey?
Yes.
I now want to explain the turkey to you.
Go for it.
Right? Because what we're talking about, what you just mentioned a minute ago was you need to avoid blow up risk. You need to avoid
total loss of capital, mistakes, fraud,
permanent impairment of capital.
Yes.
Right, as Ben Graham or Buffett would kind of talk about. And so imagine a turkey farm. Okay. So you're a turkey. You live in this kind of lovely heated shed, and you're protected from foxes and wolves and bears. And this lovely guy, the farmer, every day, he comes along and the same time every day, and he empties some stuff into the feed tray, and it's very predictable. It's very comforting. It's very reassuring. This guy obviously has got your best interests at heart. He's a man of his word. He's same time every day. He feeds you, etc. And then you get to Christmas, and unfortunately the game changes, and you experience a paradigm shift. And
you're gone.
And you're gone.
Your dinner.
And so that that turkey analogy is what blow up risk looks like in investing. So if, for example, you've been investing for the last 10 years very happily in Argentinian government bonds, and the Argentinian government has been looking like it's reforming, and it's been meeting its interest payments and its capital repayments, that looks like a safe investment until it isn't.
Sure.
It looks like a safe investment until the situation changes in that country, new government comes in, defaults, or there's a crisis, and so that that is blow up risk.
Yes.
And blow up risk is everywhere when you know how to look for it.
Yes.
Because the problem with fixed income as an asset class is it appeals to us as humans because it looks safe on the outside and it looks predictable, and it looks reassuring, and it's not as volatile as that nasty stock market. The problem is that often it's hiding blow up risk. And you're the turkey in that scenario. So if you're investing in high yield products, you're like the turkey gobbling up the feed that the farmer has kindly laid out for you, until such time as Argentina defaults on its bonds yet again, which it has done multiple times over the last 100 years. And investors never seem to learn from that. The game continues, and there's a few years there's a restructuring, a few more years go by, and a new generation of investors make the same mistake again. That is everywhere. And I submit to you that P2P lending, lending has many of those characteristics.
Anything which is working now has got a high chance to blow up. So that's why, again, with my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm going to do for you with your life savings things which have always worked. Anything which is working now, I'm going to put in the that's working now bucket, and we're going to avoid it. Is that okay with you? Nobody's going to disagree with that once they understand what's going on here. I spent a bit of time talking about the informed risk scale, and it's interesting to see that you've brought it to life with a few more stories. So there's three flavors of risk. The most dangerous flavor of risk is loss of capital, total permanent loss of capital. That for you is the turkey. The next flavor of risk is inflation, which is loss of purchasing power. That is the ice sculpture at a very warm party. And the final flavor of risk is volatility. That's the one everyone fears, but that's the one that's your friend. It's the reason why you get the returns.
Yeah, volatility isn't really risk. Volatility is opportunity as much as it is risk, to my way of thinking.
Definitely. But again, we spent a few thousand hours in the investing space to come to these wise conclusions. I'm going to mention it here, but people that get into investing decide to read The Intelligent Investor. I've read it. You've read it. I mean, I couldn't really tell you much about it. The two most important chapters from it that Warren Buffett repeatedly talks about, I think, is chapter 8, and I can't remember the other chapter. 2 chapters he says that are the most important is you need to understand something called Mr. Market, that the stock market is there to serve you and not to direct you. That's controlling your behavior. So The Intelligent Investor is a famous book written by Ben Graham that a lot of people do read, and there is a lot of good value in there, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to go through. So I wouldn't recommend it as your first investing book. And he also says the second most important chapter is how to value a business, because the stock market is a collection of businesses. So he's basically saying, understand that the stock market is a collection of businesses and how to value them if you're that way inclined. And the next most important thing to be a successful investor in the stock market is to control your behavior. And he talks about a thing called Mr. Market being, a slightly sort of drunk, psychotic, participant. And the drunker, more psychotic.
Very up and down.
Yeah, the more drunker, more up and down they are, the more successful you're going to be as a calm, disciplined investor over multi-decades. Anything else on the investing section of FIRE?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about property because to my mind, there are 2 asset classes that work for long-term wealth building accumulation. There's kind of 2 vehicles that people in the FIRE community use. Some just use one, some use a mixture. But property clearly is an important long-term asset class. As you know, that's not that's not passive income. Right, there is some administration, there is some risk, there is some hassle, there's some paperwork involved with that.
Yeah, a mini business and a high hassle factor. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, personally, I came to the conclusion on my journey that if you buy a house in London or the southeast of England, you've already got a big chunk of your net worth in kind of southeast UK real estate, and therefore, to me, I didn't want to add to that concentration risk. So to me, the beauty of the stock market is that it's so simple to invest in a global low-cost equity tracker fund, and your money has just been spread across the world's surface.
Definitely.
So again, if you like kind of sort of simple analogies, a good portfolio should pass the meteorite test. Right? And the meteorite test is, imagine an asteroid is coming out of the sky and it's heading towards the Earth's surface. If your portfolio passes the meteorite test, you don't care where the meteorite lands as long as it's not on your head, right? Because the meteorite could land on Sainsbury's head office.
Yeah.
But you don't care because you own Tesco and you own Walmart and you own the other retailers in your diversified global tracker fund. And so you don't care where the rock lands on the Earth's surface. You're protected from that kind of black swan event.
Yeah, from the spread of businesses that you own. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of property, physical property for creating real wealth. Yeah, the 2 things I say that create real wealth are businesses and bricks. Businesses being investing in the great businesses of the world, as you say, via a low-cost equity tracker fund. Or the next option is bricks, as in buying physical property. But it's anything from passive, anything, it's a mini business, there's a high hassle factor. It's a great wealth fountain, as is investing in the great businesses of the world, but it's slightly slower because you don't have something called leverage. That's what you do have if you invest in bricks. But just be very careful going into the property business. It's not the panacea it's made out to be. There's a lot of research you need to do, and you need to sort of spend a lot of time in it because there's a lot of people that are trying to create wealth in this space. So wherever there's a lot of competition, as a new entrant, it's not going to be, maybe not going to be plain sailing for you. So yeah, I would echo your words there, mate. That,
The problem is a lot of kind of people who are reasonably kind of doing pretty well, and they've got some wealth accumulated. They own their house. Maybe there's still some mortgage left, but they own a chunk of equity in their own house. And then they've got these buy-to-let properties, which normally are in the next door street or the same town. And they're all subject to the same, to some of the same kind of meteorite risk, right?
Yeah.
So if the meteorite lands on your town, that's hitting your house, but it's also hitting the other buy-to-let properties that you own because it was convenient to own something close by. And essentially, the meteorite is an analogy. It could be like a change, like a big employer could shut down, or
change your legislation, or change your tax rules.
They decide to put high-speed rail 2 through it, or whatever. Like things, bad things happen, and so. Having all of your eggs in one basket is a bad idea. Diversification is the one free lunch on Wall Street, as they say.
Yeah, and if you invest in a global equity tracker fund, roughly you're invested in around about sort of 3,000 businesses or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will shoot the lights out, some of them will die. You don't have to worry about that. It's all just factored into the fund. So in terms of a very sort of stoic, laid back, genuinely passive approach, it's investing in funds. There's absolutely nothing you need to do apart from look at it, which is probably a bad idea, increase your contributions towards it, and just factor it into your overall financial plan. Whereas the bricks route might overall turn out to be more profitable and lucrative, but it's not.
Yeah,
straightforward.
You'd hope so, because it's definitely more hassle.
Definitely more hassle, yeah. And there's obviously leverage involved, and obviously there's more tax to pay, there's more cost, et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully long term, you think it does make sense. So far, it has, and it's been a great wealth building, wealth fountain. Who knows if in the next block of time that will be the case. Okay, mate. Any final points on the investing side?
Just the final point in terms of kind of getting, and this is kind of a philosophical point, which is either super deep and profound or kind of trivial and trite, depending on how critical the listener is feeling at this point. But one of the things I say to people who are kind of terrified of, what if something bad happens, and kind of insert your own kind of disaster.
Fill in the blank. Yeah, Brexit, so Trump, all of war, terrorism.
What I just say to those people is either the system pulls through as it has done for the last 300 years, in which case being in the stock market is the best place to be, or if one of those black swans does wipe out the entire system, then you don't mind, right? Money is not your concern at that point. And so it's kind of, to me, you can't lose. You can't lose on that choice, because either the system pulls through and you prosper, or everything goes down and money is irrelevant at that point.
If Judgment Day comes sooner than we think, that's it.
That's it.
A real Judgment Day. History is the only guide we've got. Guide, I say. But yeah, it's worked so far. We've gone through all crises, and again, the world at the moment moves from panic to crisis, back to crisis. It's the constant.
Always has done.
But now, because of the echo chamber, because shouting from the rooftops, the next thing that's going to kick off is the recession. So we've had a minus quarter. Everyone's going minus 0.2%, and then followed by another minus 0.1%, and it's going to be, everyone's going to be going around carrying around this thing on their shoulder called the recession. Oh, it's XYZ at the moment because of it's just like this get is some bloody context. We've had 10, 8, whatever years of just abundance. We've got an unemployment rate of, we've got an employment rate now of 96.1%. 96.1% of people that want a job have got a job. Interest rates are on the floor. Everything is to be, enjoyed, abundance. And they're just going to be carrying around. We're in a recession at the moment. And a lot of the times I hear them moaning about this in my gym, my, nice gym. let's get a bit of reality here. We're sitting in a bloody sauna moaning about there's a recession out there. It's like, really? Anyway.
Yes. Well, this is something that I have seen change in my lifetime. Back in the day, if there was a catastrophe in Iran or India, there'd be an earthquake and 250,000 people would die, and that would get a line in the newspaper.
Yeah, in the Times, page 8.
Your page 8, one line at the bottom. Oh, 250,000 people died in India. Right now. If there's a domestic abuse case in Karachi, and the people involved in that are kind of photogenic, that's going to be on UK or US media, right? Yeah. I mean, so what the media has done is it's brought. It has the ability to bring misery from any part of the world at any point in time now, and so that is why the media is now a kind of toxic force for people that are trying to just live kind of productive lives of productivity, creativity, and wealth building. The media is a gigantic panic machine to distract you from that.
At a time when everyone should be a relentless optimist, the media is turning everyone into ridiculous pessimists. You just couldn't make this up. Yeah. Anyway, we're always, banging on about that. Final point on this, I think it was called, was it Black Friday 1987 when the stock market, declined by 25% or something? Mm-hmm. How many people actually knew about that? Just people in finance? I was alive. I was 6, 7 years of age. Now, if that happened, your hairdresser would know about it. Oh, bloody hell, terrible down the stock market today, Andy. Like, what? Why do you know about that? As a random profession to pick. I think in 1987, only people in the know would have known what's going on. It wouldn't have been like mass panic. I know the 2008, the Great Recession, the Great Panic, the Great Sale, that was covered widely, and it should have been. It was a once in a generation, even looking back now in hindsight, it was pretty horrendous. But I just wonder how many people in 1987 really knew about, the worst stock market performance of day we've ever seen.
No, so I remember that. I remember that time, and it's a fascinating
monthly period. Within a month, it was back up, wasn't it?
That's the point. By Christmas, it was back to new highs.
Yeah, it was history.
So it was a bad week, but here's the thing, right? That's a disaster if you panic and sell and you crystallize the loss.
Sure.
Right? So everything in your life should be in your financial life, and this kind of goes to life choices though as well. Choice of career and where you live, etc. The whole shooting match. Everything should be supportive of ensuring that you're never the guy that panic sells in a crash.
Yeah, okay? You should be acting and not reacting. I think it just boils down to,
And so, there is only one kind of catastrophic mistake to make in stock market investing, and that's panic selling in a crash.
And that's pushing that sell button.
Yeah.
Because then you've got another decision. When do I hit that buy button? So you've got two bad decisions to make.
Yeah.
Never do it. Never sell into a declining market if it's a globally well diversified, set up correctly in the first place.